So we're live. So welcome to Nutrition Equity, podcast where that explores the vital intersection of health policy and human narratives. I'm your host, Joanna, and today we delve into an urgent and transformative topic that bridges the gap between the medical needs and legislative action, the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. For those who aren't familiar, it is a bill that would provide, that would force healthcare companies to cover a portion of the medical foods, formula, and vitamins that are currently not available, depending on which state you're in. With the journey of its passage that continues this legislative hold to promise a revolutionizing the lives of those grappling with complex nutritional challenges due to rare and metabolic irritative conditions, intricate conditions. Our guest today is not just an advocate, but a beacon of unwavering strength and determination. Brutany stands at the forefront of leading the change for change, shaping that narrative for families confronting the challenges daily. Brutany is her role in as the head of the steering committee for the Cobalamin Disorders and with HCU Network America brings the wealth of experience and insight into the table. She is a voice that it echoes from a place where both personal and adversity and resilience and navigated through the intricate landscape of medical nutrition. Her journey is intertwined with Cobalamin G deficiency, a rare genetic disorder that ushers the insight and nutritional complications. But Brutany's story is just about her family, her family's journey. It is a testament to the power of advocacy, collaboration, and the undeniable need for equity, need for equitable and access to medical nutrition. She stands as a pillar of strength for individuals and families navigating similar paths, ensuring that their voices are heard in pursuit of more just and inclusive healthcare system. Regrettably, Brutany's journey has been marked by profound loss of one of her children. Is no longer with us. This heartrending experience lends an even deeper sense of urgency to the cause, emphasizing the critical importance of the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. As we listen to Brutany's narrative, we're reminded of the policy is more than just regulation in the lives of, and can transform lives and honor those who have bravely fought their battles. So stay with us, and as we immerse ourselves in Britany's journey and explore the complexities of the heartache and triumph of tied to the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. Together we will discover the human stories behind the policy, reminding us of collective responsibility to create a world where the medical nutrition is a right, not a privilege. Starting off, could you share your personal journey and what compelled you to become a driving force behind the Medical Nutrition Equity Act?
Thanks, Joanna. Your introduction was awfully kind. I appreciate that. You touched on a couple of the reasons my personal journey has pushed me towards advocacy, and that is being the mother of 2 boys born with an incredibly rare metabolic disorder. And as you mentioned, the tragedy and grief we've gone through in losing our son, Drew, in 2011. And despite the fact that it's been almost a dozen years since his passing, it's still a very deep and difficult thing that our family still deals with. But in his honor, and because we have Grayson, who's now 4 years old with the same disorder, my driving force is another family shouldn't have to go through what our family went through, just because they cannot access appropriate medication, or because, also advocating specifically for newborn screening. But I know we're talking more about the Medical Equity Act today, but, there are treatments for Cobalamin G, and that, our family shines a light on the fact that if given appropriate treatment, the outcome is drastically different between losing one son and another son who's now 4 years old and typically developing and doing phenomenal. So early is my boys. Everything I do is for them and for other families who shouldn't have to struggle to get medication.
Yeah. Cobalamin G is a rare condition that many might not be familiar with. Can you shed light on the specific challenges it presents, particularly in terms of nutrition and nutritional needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I could probably talk for a long time about Cobalamin G. I've had to kind of earn a at-home PhD, trying to figure out how his body works and why this causes such a big problem. But essentially, Cobalamin G is one type of homocystinuria. So homocystinuria being the body's inability to properly process certain parts of protein, and you have a buildup of homocysteine in your body. And so for Grayson in Cobalamin G, the G just stands for where in the metabolic pathway he has a genetic defect that stops the process. And so his body does not produce a certain type of enzyme, which doesn't allow homocysteine to properly be metabolized in the body. So he has a buildup of homocysteine. And the big difference between classical homocystinuria and cobalamin deficiencies, they're both types of homocystinuria, except Cobalamin disorders have their defect occurs higher in the metabolic process. And so in addition to having high homocysteine, they have low methionine, which is exactly opposite of classical homocystinuria. And so when we're talking about nutritional needs, there's been a lot more research and understanding regarding Cobalamin disorders. It was 10 to 15 years ago, it was common practice to eat a low protein diet. But we know now that that's actually counterintuitive to Cobalamin disorders. So kids diagnosed with a Cobalamin disorder, no matter what letter it is, C, D, E, F, G, J, K, and X, they do not eat a special diet because protein is needed to generate more methionine. And if you cut protein out of a diet, they already have low methionine levels, and it would just make a bad problem even worse. And so really, as far as nutritional needs, thankfully they don't have to stick to a diet like that. I know that when some doctors are looking at, now that our patients are living old enough past their teenage years, looking at, watching protein intake when they get older. But really the biggest nutritional need is a very high dose of something called hydroxycobalamin, which is a B12 supplement. And that is something that has to be, and that's kind of where the Cobalamin Disorders comes in with this Medical Nutrition Equity Act, because in order to get the amount of B12 that our kids need, in order to use a prescription, so first of all, you can't take it orally. It doesn't work through the gut and ingesting it. It has to be injected straight into their bloodstream for it to be effective. And so for hydroxycobalamin, in order to get enough of that in their system to be nutritionally adequate for them, they would have to take 15 to 20 injections of what is currently an FDA-approved medication. Wow. A day, right? So that's a lot.
Yeah.
And these are little babies, right? And these are little kids. And so all of our, as family, all of the families actually access that medication, that supplement, through compounding pharmacies. So compounding pharmacies can take the raw form of hydroxycobalamin and compound it at higher concentrations. So instead of 15 to 20 shots of what's available, over the counter at a CVS or Walgreens, they can do it in one injection per day. And so, in order to meet that nutritional need, that really is the biggest challenge in our families, is getting, access to a compounding pharmacy to get a medication so that they can, it plays into quality of life, right? Like, who wants to go through and get 10, 15 shots a day? Like, nobody,
Yeah.
So it's just a lot.
Yeah. So what's the difference between the shot and the regular B12 shot and the hydroxycobalamin?
Good question. So they're both the same medication. It's just the concentration. So when you go to, like, if you had a B12 deficiency, right, that is a diagnosis, a doctor could prescribe you an injection of hydroxycobalamin, except the concentration would be 1 milligram of B12 in a 1 milliliter injection. So if you think about like an insulin needle, 1 milliliter is like 100 units of liquid. You'd only get 1 milligram in that injection. Whereas our kids are taking, 5, 10, 15, 20 milligrams per day, and it depends on, doctors prescribing the medication, but they would need to take 15 of those shots compared to just one of a smaller amount of liquid of a higher concentrated dose. So
yeah, I do notice that you still take the cysteine though.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
So cysteine still reroutes the homocysteine. So in that cycle, when you eat protein, it's methionine, and then your body automatically changes methionine to homocysteine, and it's just a matter of releasing some different methyl groups into your body that's used for DNA synthesis, brain development, those types of things. And then that raw homocysteine has to be converted back into methionine because your body can't do anything with homocysteine. In order to do that, an enzyme uses B12 to convert that molecule back into methionine. That's where Grayson and other Cobalamin kids can't. That's where their dysfunction occurs. So then their body can't create more methionine from that homocysteine. So it just creates this like buildup. It's kind of like you think of a dam in a river, and it's stopped up in the wrong spot.
Right.
So,
since higher dosages of cysteine actually do raise methionine levels, would that help?
It does. It does to an extent. I mean, So just depending on metabolism rates and, how high how like homocysteine is, it does help to a point. Like at some point your body just can't utilize all of the cysteine, but typically our patients are taking much higher doses of cysteine than classical homocystinuria patients. And for the exact reason you just said, we want methionine to go higher. And so it kind of acts as a dual effect there. So they take cysteine, according to the NIH, cysteine and hydroxycobalamin are the two proven medications to support this diagnosis. Other supplements are used that don't have a ton of research, but most families are on leucovorin, which is a type of folinic acid, and sometimes methionine supplements. It just depends on, an individual kiddo's levels. They do lots of lab work to determine what other supplements they might need. So
yeah, and I'm surprised you guys got that on the newborn screening just recently.
Well, not yet. So Cobalamin C is on the newborn screen. Some kiddos are picked up because Cobalamin C also has homocystinuria and methylmalonic acidemia, which is a separate pathway. And so in order to be picked up on the newborn screen, a kid would have to have high methylmalonic acidemia, which is typically how they would find some Cobalamin disorders. A lot of kids are missed, though, still. What we're hoping is their CDC has come out with a new first-tier newborn screen test that would test for all of the homocystinuria. So they would look for high homocysteine, which would classical homocystinuria, severe MTHFR, and all the Cobalamin disorders would be flagged. So we're super excited about that. Because,
I'm surprised you got that going because of where we're at with the newborn screening and it not being reauthorized yet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take any credit for it. Danae and Margie at the HCU Network of America are incredible advocates for the newborn screening. I'm still learning all of the intricacies of how the newborn screening works and how its individual states kind of function, but they're incredible as far as advocating and, really pushing for research in that area. So
I agreed with you there.
Yeah.
Let's see. As head of the steering committee what are some key roles, some key goals with HCU Network America? What are some key goals and initiatives you are working on to raise awareness and advocate for change?
That's a great question. So I've been so fortunate to be working with the Cobalamin Steering Committee for a few years since we kind of got it up and running. It was, Danae's stroke of genius to start, including the Cobalamin disorders in the HCU Network of America. But really our goal is to, first and foremost, education, because while there is some research and publications out there regarding Cobalamin disorders, it doesn't seem to reach everybody. So it's not, when the doctor goes to medical school, they can't learn about every single rare disease and those types of things. And so the problem is not all the doctors across the United States and then international understand how to treat effectively a Cobalamin disorder. And so it's raising awareness of what research is out there, and then helping parents become advocates for their own child to make sure that their child is getting the correct treatment. And so really providing resources for families to bridge the gap of information and help them, talk to their doctors and their child's medical team to help them make sure that their child is getting the appropriate care for the disorder. Like I said before, we know now that low-protein diets are counterintuitive for these disorders, and sadly enough, there are still kids being put on low-protein diets, which will affect brain development, overall growth. It will affect later down the road. It can have implications as far as cognitive delays developmentally. And so it's really a matter of taking what research we know and understanding and trying to get it out into the general public for people to understand, what's going on. And along with that, really advocating for awareness of the difficulties in our community, trying to really hear families. We love it when families will message us or talk to us about what their struggles are, because then almost always those struggles are all the same, right? Mm-hmm. So we can be really helpful, and then we can start really making sure that we are advocating for what is the biggest pressing need of the community. So, which really truly is access to that high concentration of hydroxycobalamin right now. So, yeah.
Let's see. In your experience, what are the most significant obstacles families face when striving to ensure adequate nutrition for individuals with rare genetic disorders like Cobalamin G deficiency?
Yeah, that's financially. Honestly, that's number one. I would say financially, it's hard for families because our kids are prescribed this high concentrated, high dose of hydroxycobalamin. They need it to live. It's not a matter of, just a deficiency. They need it to survive. And it is incredibly expensive. You can only get it through a compounding pharmacy, and 9.9 out of 10 insurance companies will not pay for it. And so our families are paying for this medication out of pocket, which, we have talked to the community. We're looking at like $300-400 a month to access this life-saving medication that, and we've had families fight insurance companies. Medicaid will not pay for it because it's a compounded medication. And so by far, one of the biggest challenges our families face is getting this medication and paying for it. And looking at ways to help them fight insurance companies. It is it's a nightmare. I mean, it's months long, drawn out processes, lots of paperwork, calling people, and it's exhausting when you already have a child that has a lot of medical needs. And then on top of that, you have to spend all of this time fighting insurance to get medication paid for that your child has to have to survive. Is really frustrating, for sure. Another obstacle our families are facing is access to the medication as well. Unfortunately, there is only one European manufacturer, and then the rest of the hydroxycobalamin, that the powder they're used to make that compounded medication comes from China or somewhere in a European, but that's only like 10%. Most of it comes from China, where they manufacture it. And the biggest problem is compounding pharmacies have been especially since COVID and because of shipping issues and whatnot. Compounding pharmacies are even having trouble getting enough to meet supply and demand. And it's making it really difficult. I have to order my son's medication at least a month in advance just because I have to get on a list to make sure that I get the next batch of compounded medication. And if I don't, then I'm out of luck. I don't have anything for him. And so it's really terrifying that there is a supply and demand issue, and access to that is dwindling. There's not very many compounding pharmacies in the United States that will compound this. I know California patients are really struggling because due to the laws that they have as far as shipping medication across state boundaries, they are required to use only one compounding pharmacy in California, and it's been a nightmare. They've had packages come that all of the vials have broken, and the medication is spilled in the package, and so all of a sudden they've got $500 worth of medication that's just broken and in a box, and that then they have to go through the process of getting a claim filed. It's just been a nightmare. It's it's a lot for families to deal with. So definitely financial, it's a struggle. Access to compounding pharmacies, and eventually it'll be supply. Making sure that there's enough for patients. It seems to be there's these ebb and flows of different health crazes in our country, right? People love kale, and there's everyone eats kale and it's really cool, or hummus. I don't know, for some reason recently, B12 has become a new health craze. You can see across the United States stores popping up all over the place, in malls even, called the B12 store. And you can go into the B12 store and you can get a shot of B12. And that's lovely for people that might need it, except the problem is now these places are also now affecting the supply and demand chain. And, you know, when it comes to economy, if more people are wanting these B12 shots, the families have seen already a medication that's expensive skyrocket price just because it has become kind of a new health craze. So even though, you know, and it's just what our families need to survive, but for other people, it's just, I mean, it gives you a boost of energy, I think. So, yeah. So, I mean, you can just go into anyone. We have one here in Denver. You can go to the B12 store and they will give you a shot of B12. So it's crazy.
Yeah, because it's seen as a vitamin, and so it's automatically optional.
Exactly. Right. People,
by
the
FDA.
Insurance companies don't understand. You know, I've had conversations with insurance companies trying to get it covered for Grayson, and they're like, well, you know, it's just a vitamin. And I'm like, they don't understand. Like, if he does not take this vitamin, if he does not have this high dose, he could die. Mm-hmm. Like, that's plain and simple. Or he will have irreversible brain damage, irreversible eye vision damage. And I'm like, what? You know, and so it's sad that kids across the nation and across the world have irreversible damage because they cannot access, you know, the appropriate medication, or their family can't afford it. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's just, to me, in our society, that's just so wrong. Mm-hmm.
So how do things differ in your state, in Colorado?
So Colorado, thankfully, we have one of the best compounding pharmacies here in Colorado. College Pharmacy is where we get our medication from, and they ship all over the United States and internationally. The biggest effect we have, again, is supply and demand, because so many other compounding pharmacies are closing their doors or can't supply this medication anymore. And so more families are having to use, you know, College Pharmacy. And so there's just not keeping up with that supply and demand, or they just charge us a lot more, you know?
Yeah.
So.
So, let's see. How does the Medical Nutrition Equity Act have the potential to transform the lives of families dealing with complex nutritional needs?
Yeah, the hope would be, so in addition to providing insurance and requiring insurance companies to pay for low-protein food or those type of nutritional needs, it would also require insurance companies, including Medicaid, to pay for that high-dose hydroxycobalamin. And, you know, helping the insurance industry understand this is not just a vitamin to make you feel better. This is a life-saving needed medication. And so I think the Medical Nutrition Equity Act would really support families financially to be able to access the medication. So
yeah, does a geneticist help you with that?
No, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I know that our genetic counselors will ask us, you know, are you able to pay for his medication? And thankfully, we're in a place where we can afford it, but we know other families aren't. And I know that our genetic counseling team at Colorado Children's does try to help families meet that need, financially help them find financial support to help pay for it. But that's just not the case always for our families. So we, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's another place where HCI Network America is also very helpful.
So originally we had, I remember I think it's called HealthWise.
Yes, we did have HealthWell.
Yeah, so HealthWell, but then their whole thing was, so we were so excited. We're like, yes, a way for like families to be able to like have that paid for. Problem is, you have to submit a claim through insurance and have it be denied. but a lot of times the pharmacies, the compounding pharmacies, won't even submit claims to insurance. Mm-hmm. And so it just got really complicated, and it basically that ended up not being able to help our Cobalamin community because the requirements that they had set out for financial support wouldn't have met the qualifications for it. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately.
Your journey has unfortunately been marked by a loss of one of your children. Has this profound experience shaped your commitment to advocacy and pursuit for policy change? I think you've already answered that pretty much.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not fair. I know that sounds so funny to say. It's, I just think of my 7-year-old who says it's not fair. But it's not fair.
True.
It's not right that there are treatments that are proven to help, and families are still losing their children because there's not enough understanding, and the policies, especially in regard to supporting rare disease, just aren't there. A little baby here in the United States, same disorder, last year passed away from the disorder because it was not found in time. The doctors didn't know how to treat it, and they didn't have the ability to access that medication quick enough to give it to their child. And it's just not right. And, that's really what drives me. And like I said before, nobody should have to go through. I would, if I can prevent one child, one family from that loss, then I've done my due diligence, that I've done what I set out to do, because it's indescribable to lose your baby. It's terrible.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So, and I, every day that Grayson wakes up, I'm incredibly grateful for how he's doing. And it drives me to make sure that he has a future, Mm-hmm.
So what misconceptions or myths have you encountered about rare genetic disorders and their associated nutritional challenges, and how do you work to dispel them?
I think the biggest difficulty is people assuming that their genetic defect is similar to having a B12 deficiency. Someone who has a B12 deficiency might have lower energy or, certain side effects, but their ability, they can still survive without it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the biggest difficulty,
it really depends on how far down it gets to be.
Right. And I just wanted, trying to teach that this is genetic. They're born this mm-hmm. way. There is no cure right now. The medication is what they have to have their whole life. That this is something, and it's hard. I feel like with so for example, diabetes mm-hmm. is a very difficult metabolic disorder. It's really hard to treat, but it's come a long way in the last 20, 30 years of understanding and what medical technology is out there.
And diabetes is also really common. So
right, it is absolutely, that is very true. But just trying to help people understand that it's, this is genetic. This is not something that's just a deficiency, that it really will severely impact their life. And that really goes towards how we dispel them. So we're really focused at the Cobalamin Steering Committee, creating educational resources for families as well as for practitioners, pediatricians who might not have ever seen a child with this type of rare disorder. And so on our HCU Network America website, under the resources tab for Cobalamin Disorders, our committee we are trying to really get to the heart of misunderstandings about the disorder and how to help families really understand what's going on. So,
and for those who aren't aware, that's HCUNetworkAmerica.org. Let's see. Passing legislation often involves bipartisan support from collaboration. What strategies do you believe can bridge political divides and garner support for the Medical Nutrition Equity Act?
That's a great question. I am not even the best person to say I understand much about legislation. It's complicated. It's so complicated. You know, I took a trip to the Capitol here in Colorado for the National Organization of Rare Diseases, and we were doing, a rare disease day at the Capitol, and this was before COVID. You know, we haven't been able to do much since then, and just, I think the biggest thing is sharing your story and sharing, because the human experience can gap a political divide. Everyone can relate to a human experience of me being a parent, my daughter being a sibling of a child with a rare disorder. And so I think sharing our stories and being truthful and honest about our struggles as a community can really bridge that gap, because it doesn't matter what my political beliefs are when it comes to uniting our community. When I share my story, it's not political. It's about my children and just access to appropriate medical care. And so I think as far as the legislation and really looking for support, I think the more people that can share their stories with their lawmakers, having an opportunity to go to the Capitol and share your story like that, and helping them understand that human element, that it's not, look at it from a human element, put a face to the Medical Equity Act of this is going to help Grayson and his little face and how cute he is. This is not a bipartisan issue. This should not be a financial issue or checking a box for an insurance company issue. It's a human issue. And so my biggest thing that I try to encourage families, it can be hard. I mean, the first couple of times that I shared my story in public about my son Drew, that was like a mess, crying, and it was like awfully embarrassing, but like it's hard. It's really hard. But in the end, the progress you see and the connections you make, you can start to really understand that sharing that story is important. That's my biggest, I always encourage families to talk to their local politicians and their local leaders about their individual difficulties. So.
Let's see. For our listeners, who want to get involved and make a difference, what actions can they take to support the push for the Medical Nutrition Equity Act?
Great question. So I know there's an email that goes out, and I'm not sure who generates it, but I know that maybe it's on our HCU Network America.org website. But
that is actually on nutritionequity.org.
Okay, nutritionequity.org. You can go on there, and I have signed up for that, and whenever they send you emails, and it's so easy. You just have to enter your address, and it sends information. You can add more of your own personal story to it as well, but it sends emails to your local politicians, your local leaders, and that makes it so easy for you. But that's a great way to get involved. It doesn't require you to leave the house. You can do it right on your computer. It takes like 5 minutes to do. So definitely accessing and supporting that way. Also, sharing your story, again, like I said, sending in your family story to the HCU Network America newsletter. Lots of people get that, or clinics get it, and it's disseminated widely. And so that type of information can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, this is more on a general issue, but that's also on the Nutrition Equity site, the nutritionequity.org. Let's see. Can you share a particular impactful moment or success story from your journey as an advocate that reaffirms your beliefs in the significance of your work?
Yeah, sure. So even though we're called the HCU Network of America, we actually talk to a lot of families internationally, because given how rare this disorder is, it would, there's not going to be like branches of this organization everywhere across the world. So we definitely hear a lot from our international families. And there was this sweet, wonderful mom who contacted me from Poland, and her daughter, they knew she had a Cobalamin disorder. They were waiting to find out which one specifically, but the doctor had never heard of it. There wasn't really anyone that she knew in Poland who could help her. It was a matter of just messaging back and forth over Facebook Messenger, because it seems to be the internationally friendly way to communicate with people. And being able to send her articles and resources and things that she could take to her doctor and say, my daughter needs this medication, or my daughter needs this, and she's not taking enough of this because this research article says she needs this much. That baby, I prayed for that sweet baby for months, because she wasn't doing great for a while, and now she's amazing. And that just warms my heart, because if this organization was around when our son Drew was alive, and if I had found someone that could have helped me in that way, the question, could the outcome have been different? And being able to individually help families learn how to advocate for themselves, that makes me feel like I've been successful. Giving them the tools and the resources to learn how to be an advocate, because when it's a rare disorder, you can't assume ever people know, or the doctors are going to know how to treat your child. You really have to be your own advocate for your child. And so I think for me, helping other families by creating these different resources and having these opportunities like with you to share my story, helping them to become advocates for their child, I think is the biggest success that I would claim. Not much, but that's about as good as it.
It's actually a pretty good one. If you could communicate a single message to lawmakers and policymakers about an urgency of the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, what would it be?
That these are real people and real families that have a terribly difficult time financially affording a medication that their children require to survive. This is not just a need for supplementation. This is serious. I think that's difficult for people to understand, especially, policymakers aren't doctors. They don't understand that medical part. So it's again, helping them understand the seriousness of what could happen if families can't afford or access that medication.
Having navigated the challenging path of advocacy, what advice would you offer to parents or individuals to make a meaningful impact within the healthcare system?
Oh, that's a great question. If I had an answer, I think I probably would have had my son's medication paid for by now. I mean, I think just keep trying. I mean, because it's been 4 years now since our son was born, and I still can't get our insurance company, which is the same insurance we've had since he's been born, to pay for his medication. But there are families out there that can access it, and we've been able to find other areas for funding. And so, if one door closes, another one might open, and just try, don't give up. And, the last bit, should be, trying to access that medication. Never be afraid to ask for help, because if you can't afford that medication for your child and it's going to affect their health and their ability and their future, there are people out there that would like to help, and there are ways for people to get funding. And so just not to be afraid to ask for help, and that certainly any of the members of the Cobalamin Steering Committee, we would do everything we can to help if someone couldn't provide that information or get the medication and to pay for it for their family, or to access it, or to find a pharmacy that would provide it. I know that all of the families would would do everything they can to find something to help them. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you could share with our listeners as a personal anecdote, a rallying call, or a note of hope for the future?
Yeah, I mean, one of our goals at the Cobalamin Steering Committee, and definitely with the HCU Network of America, is to, in addition to policy making to have hydroxycobalamin paid for, we're also working on the other end of, can we find a pharmaceutical company or a smaller company who could create a high concentrated dose of hydroxycobalamin and get FDA approval for it, which would then, also help with insurance paying for that medication. And so the note for hope is we are trying many different avenues to try to get this medication for families paid for and available for their child. Certainly we would love to hear from other families, especially if they're struggling to get medication. We have a Facebook page specifically for Cobalamin families, and certainly have lots of people who chat. We have a whole list of different compounding pharmacies all across the country if they need help finding a new pharmacy. And so there is definitely resources out there for people who need it. So hopefully come to us, and we are happy to help. But know that this is a huge priority for the Cobalamin Steering Committee and the organization in general, as far as making sure that this medication in some way can get paid for and is like access to families.
So where do you find the resources before they hit the HCI Network America's website?
What do you mean?
Sorry. The resources that you have on the HCI Network America website, where do you find them?
We create them, actually. So a lot of times, in our committee meetings, the committee members will share, this is a struggle or this is a struggle, and then we brainstorm how can we create a resource that can help with those difficulties. And then we assemble whoever feels like they're the best to put together that resource. We create these resources, whether they're infographics, videos. We're currently working on an animated video series for our teenagers to help them understand their disorder better. And so we create them. We have our medical advisors will look over them before they are published on the website to make sure they're all medically accurate. We obviously don't want to publish anything that's incorrect. And so, those resources we create because there isn't anyone else creating them because it was such a rare disorder. We just have to, I have to really dig deep in my creativity. That's never very creative. And so, I've learned how to do lots of different things on the fly with the Cobalamin Steering Committee in trying to create good resources to help our families. So yeah, I mean, before we don't release any of them until they've been looked over by medical advisors. So anything, all of it would be on the website as far as resources go. But, if anyone has any ideas or struggles that they have that they would like to see a resource, we would love to hear that. We'd like to hear when families say, can you put this together? And that would really help me, for my kiddo. We had a family whose suggestion was helping their child's teacher, because every year the child's teacher would change, help them understand their child's disorder when they go to school. So we created a template of an All About Me brochure, tri-folded, it's a fillable PDF form, so families can go in very easily and fill it out. Information about their child, print it out, and then take it into school. Just an easy resource to kind of make families' lives a little bit easier when it's pre-programmed and made for them, to kind of share information and help educate children's teachers. So that's just one example, but we'd love to hear from families if there are specific resources that they'd like to see. So
as we wrap up this insightful episode of Nutrition Equity, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Brittany for sharing her remarkable journey. Her unwavering advocacy and her vision for more equitable and for a more equitable future. Brittany's story reminds us that behind every piece of legislation lies a tapestry of human experiences. Hopes and challenges that deserve our attention and action. The Medical Nutrition Equity Act stands as a beacon of possibility and promise. That even when we come together, we can transform lives, families, and communities. We are called to rise above the policy, the political divides, and recognize the power as we hold to make a profound impact on the lives of those who need it the most. So let's amplify Brittany's voice, the voices of families like hers, and the voices of those who have been silenced by challenges of medical nutrition inequity. Together we can pave the way for a world where access to essential nutrition isn't just a privilege, but a fundamental human right. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Nutrition Equity. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned to more information, to more inspiring conversations that bridge our gap between policy and people, creating a future where health and well-being know no bounds. Ultimately, next time, remember that every voice, every story, and every action counts. So on that note, you can subscribe to my channel by going to I am rare_chef on YouTube. I also do a lot of cooking videos on there, mostly with low protein and vegan things. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joanna. It was great talking to you today.
Thanks.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.